Welcome back to Up to Speed. We catch up to the world of gaming and esports. We took a trip down memory lane to relive the amazing, exciting, and wondrous games that were LucasArts. Now, it's time to talk about the future. My guest will be joining me in just a little bit. He is a respected individual and producer in the world of video games. Now, one of the first video games that I want to talk about that was in development for LucasArts was Star Wars 1313. This game looked incredible. Let's go ahead and take a look at the trailer.
Catch a deep breath. It'll be the last fresh air you'll get for a while.
Cargo lane cleared for descent to level 1313.
The rings aren't on Coruscant. They're underneath it. It's a long way down. It gets a lot dirtier where we're headed.
You've reached level 1313.
Take my money. I want to play that game so badly, and it's frustrating to think that that game is not going to be released. But to talk more about this game and also the future of video game development, I have with me a producer, engineer, and writer. He has also worked at large publishers including Ubisoft and 2K and also startups such as Play Studios. His works include the free-to-play shooter Ghost Recon Online and the biggest NBA video game franchise, NBA 2K13. Joining us live via Skype from the beautiful city of San Francisco, Mr. Omar Abdelwaheed. Omar, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So first off, you've been involved in the video game industry for a long time now. What was your reaction to hearing that Disney had closed down LucasArts?
I was surprised. A lot of my industry friends, claim they saw it coming. I honestly was surprised. I mean, it sort of hit me more as a fan of all the Lucas games, and I feel sad for the people. I mean, it's here in the Bay, it's here in San Francisco, so we all mix together, and I know quite a few of those people.
And to see the development and the behind the scenes of the development of Star Wars 1313, it seemed that it was a very healthy company. They were working on quite a big undertaking, a very, very neat project. What were your thoughts on the release details and images of the game Star Wars 1313?
Well, from what I saw, which is pretty much just what was limited to most people and most fans, it looked cool. I mean, I like the whole underground tip. I like how, we weren't going to try to be Jedi like normal and, fight for the good or whatever. I'm personally, I think a Jedi like paladins, and I'm tired of playing paladins. I like the idea that I could be, something a little more dirty and, with a richer backstory.
Something a little more pragmatic in this huge Star Wars universe. Well, when I look at the gameplay, and I see the third-person type gameplay and shooting and taking cover, this reminds me of Uncharted. The Uncharted series, which is an amazing series. If you have not played the series, please check it out. It is developed by Naughty Dog. And Naughty Dog has been in development they've been around for a long, long time developing many different games, but they have been pretty much the spearhead of very, very cinematic style games, and that's what it seems Star Wars 1313 could be. And this starts to bring up a lot of questions of licensing and publishers and using third-party publishers to create these games. Do you think a game like Star Wars 1313 could be picked up by a development team such as Naughty Dog? Oh, I think we might have lost him. Okay. Well, apologize about that, ladies and gentlemen. We'll get Omar back in just a second here. He said he was having some internet trouble. Well, I do have a quote from Mr. Max Dykhoff, who is a developer at Naughty Dog. He had this to say: "Obviously, the closure of LucasArts is a shock, and my condolences go out to all those who lost their jobs. However, I think the decision Disney has made is the right one. It's telling that the most well-known and critically acclaimed Star Wars game, Knights of the Old Republic, KOTOR for short, wasn't developed by LucasArts. Getting stuck developing a single franchise for decades is never healthy. Disney has made a good decision in getting out of a business they aren't familiar with and sticking with licensing and quality control." He goes on to later wish the talented individuals the best of luck. He is currently working on The Last of Us. Now, to add some more comments here from my side, you know, in an ideal world, you would think, yes, Naughty Dog should jump all over this program. And in some details that were coming out from different reporters, were saying that it's unlikely, however possible, yet unlikely, that a game such as Star Wars 1313 could continue in the hands of another developer. However, we saw a recent turn of events that mimic or mirror what has happened with LucasArts, and that was the closing down of THQ. THQ had many, many different games that were being developed across many different platforms and different types of games, and they were sold off to different developers that wanted to continue those different games. Company of Heroes comes to mind at that moment. There's plenty of other games that many people are excited for, and some franchises that hopefully can find some good homes. However, we'll have to see what happens with these talented individuals, since Disney is making a lot of changes to the Lucas foundation, I want to say. Everything that's been involved in Lucas, with Industrial Light and Magic to LucasArts, even the Disney Epic Studios, the people that were in charge of that game have left as well. So it seems Disney is going to have a larger undertaking for the Disney Infinity type project. Omar, do I have you back on Skype?
I think you do.
Good, we have you. We have you. I was just talking about the quote of Mr. Max Dykoff from Naughty Dog. I believe I sent it to you previously, talking about the decision Disney has made is the right one, and getting stuck developing a single franchise for decades is never healthy. Disney has made a good decision in getting out of a business they aren't familiar with and sticking with licensing and quality control. Do you agree with this statement and this sentiment from Max, or even overall for the in terms of Disney development?
Well, I don't know what their internal decisions were made on. I do think licensing and just staying true to your brands and your IP isn't a bad decision. That's definitely a strategy to go down. You know, as big as these games.
Omar, I think we're losing you again. I think we're losing him again. That bit rate. All right, well, the previous talks that Omar and I had of the advantages of licensing and in-house projects versus licensed out projects, this comes into, what are you good at? If you are licensing your games, your IPs out to different partners, to different developers, you allow them to specialize in what they do the best, and that is to develop games. They've been doing it for a long time. If you, as an in-house developer, are also have to look at licensing for cups, for toys, working with different fast food restaurants and different licensing type of businesses, really you are stretched thin a bit. So to be able to contract out and use those third-party developers is beneficial. Omar, I think we have you back here. I was just going over the advantages of licensing out a product compared to developing it in-house. You, sir, have a lot more experience with that than I do. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, what I was saying, if you can, manage your brand, which, you should know your brand better than anyone else, and you can build a relationship with a third party over time that you really trust, which means not just doing one title, but many titles over time, and have a consistent relationship there. It can be to your benefit, because then you can sit back, as the customer and as the key holder of the license and say, hey, this is how Star Wars or whatever your brand is should be portrayed across these channels, whether it's physical channels like toys or movies or video games. So it can be very beneficial. And then you let the experts for that particular channel take over and work on the title in this case as they know best.
One of those experts in the realm of video game and storytelling was BioWare. We saw how well they did with Knights of the Old Republic, and also the Old Republic itself, even though it wasn't a huge hit because of the endgame content was not very solid for the MMO. But those, to me, are huge examples of how they did it right. But what are some disadvantages, would you say, Omar, for licensing out products instead of in-house development?
Well, again, you have to trust that another party that's not you will take your brand as seriously and hold it in importance the same way you would. So it's a relationship again. You're trying to find the right people that you wish were truly internal to your place to make the game that you want. So the difficulty again is they're removed. They're often not even in the same country, because obviously there's a lot of great studios around the world. And you have to somehow manage, how can I, see what they're doing, and how can I get feedback and give them feedback on the progression of the game without interrupting what they do naturally well. So often it's done through certain milestones and deliveries that are negotiated, and you take that back, and you decide this is going well or not. And in that sense, it's difficult because you only see the milestones and progressions at certain points in time. You're not always there because you can't be always there.
Seems there's also a lot of red tape sometimes, depending on the company that owns the IP that is licensing out. You could contract a developer to make it. 6 months in, you show up to their offices and you realize this isn't what I asked for. This needs to be completely scrapped and move on. Now you're 6 months behind on a projected title date, so communication is very, very important, especially being on the same page. Looks like we lost Omar again. Apologize about that. The wonderful world of the internet, ladies and gentlemen. It's the vehicle of esports and everything we do. We might have him back here in just a second. I apologize about that again. But some of the disadvantages, what I was speaking on, if you have a vision to what you want the game to be, but it's maybe not realistic, or the technology isn't there yet, or what your budget is not going to be feasible, when you are not communicating that to the developer that you use, or you're too cheap, which is an issue sometimes to the developer that you use, you're not going to get the same product that you wanted, that you hyped up, that your marketing team tried to push out. And that could be some disadvantages of licensing out other products. Try to get Omar back in here in just a second, ladies and gentlemen. I want to talk a little bit more about the Old Republic, and this might have been the case. BioWare did a phenomenal, phenomenal job with any game regarding storytelling, except Dragon Age 2. That was not very good. It could have been a lot better. But going into what people expected of an MMO, and how they really wanted to have endgame content. Why would you want to play the same content over and over and over again just for a piece of gear? That's why people were leaving World of Warcraft. They wanted to play a new adventure, to explore a new world, and to be really, really involved in it instead of fighting the same boss over and over again. The PvP for the Old Republic, phenomenal. Loved it. Could have been an esport, and I advocated that to EA years ago, saying, get me on your team. I can tell you how this can work as a competitive format. It just fizzled because the reward system was not there. It was not very good at all. And also, there was no way to have a ladder type point system for the hut ball or the different PvP engagements. It could have been a lot more than it was. So that gets into the goals of what a BioWare company has with storytelling and being able to tell a compelling story with wonderful voice acting, compared to what Star Wars wanted was an MMO World of Warcraft type format. Omar, I believe I have you back once again. I was just talking about the strengths and weaknesses of Star Wars: The Old Republic and how it fizzled out because it didn't have any high-end game content, end-game content. Did you have any thoughts on that before we move on to Kickstarters?
Well, I'm still, a huge MMO fan, and I honestly did not give the Old Republic that much of a chance because I was still suffering from a game that I loved at first, Galaxies, but then ultimately I just couldn't deal with the grind. I just honestly couldn't deal with the grind. Yeah. But I love what they were trying to do, and my understanding is the biggest problem it had was the expense. So that's a tough one to make a game like that.
It is, especially with the most valuable currency for us as humans is time, not just money, and you have to put a lot of time into it.
Yes.
We'll see what happens with their expansion and going free-to-play. The free-to-play model, which we'll talk about a little bit later with freemium, does expand the user base, but maybe not as much of a committed user base.